In two entirely separate controversies, involving different industries, timelines, and criticisms, the same explanation has quietly emerged at the exact moment accountability became uncomfortable. When audiences questioned Blake Lively's conduct during a film promotion, the backlash was reframed as a coordinated smear. When Taylor Swift faced criticism following the release of her latest album, the discourse was suddenly labeled inauthentic, driven by shadowy networks and bad actors. The message was subtle but powerful. If the criticism feels overwhelming, it must not be real. This framing didn't come from fans alone. It was reinforced by prestige media, vague tech reports, and carefully worded statements that shifted the focus away from the substance of the criticism and toward the alleged motives behind it. Instead of asking why people were upset, the narrative became who was supposedly manipulating them. And once that shift happens, criticism no longer needs to be addressed. It only needs to be discredited. What makes this pattern troubling isn't the idea that bots exist. They do. It's how quickly the existence of bots is being used as a universal excuse, a reputational shield that allows powerful celebrities to sidestep genuine public reaction. When every backlash is labeled a smear campaign and every critic is reduced to a pawn, accountability quietly disappears. This isn't just about Blake Lively or Taylor Swift. It's about a growing playbook in celebrity crisis management. One where criticism is no longer something to confront, but something to explain away.
In my experience, in my bubble of social media and my fan base, I'm looked at oftentimes as like this example of like what a man can be, or like how a woman should be treated by a man, or the way that I talk about my wife, or how present I am as a father, and all of the things that social media can paint. And yet there are times when I will say something to my wife because I'm in my wound that, like, if there was a camera on, I would lose all my followers. I'd be canceled in a heartbeat because I'll say something out of my like ego that is mean.
Over the past year, a familiar narrative has begun to take shape in celebrity media coverage. The idea that widespread online criticism against certain public figures is not organic, but instead the result of coordinated bot-driven smear campaigns. This framing first gained traction during the controversy surrounding Blake Lively in the summer of 2024, and it has now reemerged more aggressively around Taylor Swift following the release of her latest album in October. The troubling part is not merely the claim itself, but how loosely connected events are being bundled together and presented as evidence of a single orchestrated operation. Rolling Stone played a central role in advancing this narrative. Without presenting conclusive scientific data or transparent methodology, the outlet published an article implying that an inorganic campaign targeting Taylor Swift mirrored what allegedly happened to Blake Lively months earlier. The insinuation went further. Because both women were subjected to online backlash, and because their social circles intersect, the assumption arose that the same antagonistic forces, and even the same individuals, must be responsible. This leap in logic proved incendiary. Online communities, particularly Reddit forums focused on celebrity lawsuits and media accountability, quickly erupted. Swift fans interpreted the report as confirmation that Taylor was a victim of malicious digital warfare. Supporters of Justin Baldoni, whose name became loosely entangled in the narrative, viewed the article as a reckless attempt to implicate him in something wholly unrelated. Media outlets then compounded the issue by endlessly repeating the claims, each iteration stripping away nuance and amplifying implication. At the center of Rolling Stone's reporting was a little-known social listening firm that claimed to have analyzed tens of thousands of online posts across multiple platforms. According to the article, this company suggested that fringe narratives, originating on platforms like 4chan, had migrated into mainstream discourse, shaping public perception despite being seeded by inauthentic actors. While this phenomenon is not impossible in theory, the problem lies in how the conclusion was presented, as though it were definitive proof rather than speculative analysis. Crucially, Rolling Stone did not sufficiently distinguish between legitimate criticism and alleged bot activity. The backlash Taylor Swift faced after her album release was multifaceted. Some listeners criticized lyrical choices, symbolism, and perceived cultural appropriation. Others questioned the album's artistic direction or commented on Swift's immense wealth and public positioning. These critiques came from real people, many speaking thoughtfully and in good faith. Yet the article's framing blurred these voices together with extremist content, subtly encouraging readers to dismiss criticism as manipulation. By drawing parallels to Blake Lively's situation, the article further distorted the narrative. Lively's backlash was rooted in tangible behavior, her promotional choices, public demeanor, and perceived insensitivity while marketing a film about domestic violence. There was no widespread accusation tying her to extremist ideology, no Nazi symbolism controversy, and no comparable rhetoric. The only similarity was public dissatisfaction, hardly evidence of a shared smear campaign. This bundling of unrelated controversies into a single explanatory framework serves a powerful purpose. It reframes celebrity accountability as victimhood. Instead of engaging with criticism on its merits, the narrative suggests that any negative discourse must be the work of shadowy forces. And once that frame is accepted, anyone who continues to criticize risks being labeled either misinformed or complicit. What makes this especially troubling is the timing. As court documents in Blake Lively's legal matters began to surface, documents that mentioned Taylor Swift's presence in communications, the sudden resurgence of a bot narrative linking both women felt less like coincidence and more like strategy. The story no longer appeared to be about understanding online behavior, but about shaping perception at a critical moment. The Rolling Stone article relied heavily on findings from a company that few had ever heard of prior to its publication. Founded in 2023, the firm maintains a sparse online presence, lists no significant prior research, and offers little transparency about its personnel or analytical methods. Despite this, its report was treated as authoritative, sparking intense debate across social media platforms. According to the report, the company analyzed approximately 24,000 posts from over 18,000 users across 14 platforms in the days following Taylor Swift's album release. It claimed that extremist narratives, specifically accusations involving Nazi symbolism, originated on fringe platforms before spreading to mainstream spaces like X and TikTok. While this trajectory is plausible, the report failed to provide essential context. How many posts originated on each platform, how coordination was measured, or what statistical tools were used to distinguish bots from humans. Even more concerning was the firm's own admission that it does not determine truth or falsity. Its stated objective is merely to observe how narratives spread, not whether those narratives are valid. This disclaimer alone undermines the way Rolling Stone presented the findings. Readers were led to believe the report debunked criticism, when in reality it only claimed that some content moved in coordinated ways, a phenomenon that can occur naturally in highly engaged fandoms. The lack of methodological rigor did not go unnoticed. Media scholars and digital analysts pointed out the absence of research questions, sample transparency, and platform breakdowns. Without these fundamentals, the report cannot reasonably support the sweeping conclusions drawn from it. Yet Rolling Stone published the story with confidence, lending institutional credibility to speculative claims. The fallout was immediate. Swift fans celebrated what they saw as proof of her innocence, while critics accused the publication of laundering public relations through pseudoscience. TikTok videos, Reddit threads, and opinion pieces proliferated, each interpreting the report in ways that suited pre-existing beliefs. Rather than clarifying discourse, the article inflamed it. What makes this episode especially revealing is how it reframed criticism. Accusations of racism or fascist symbolism, some raised by black women engaging critically with the album, were lumped together with fringe extremism. This conflation delegitimized authentic voices, suggesting that discomfort or offense was merely the byproduct of manipulation. In effect, the report created a shield. Any critique could now be dismissed as part of a larger attack, regardless of its substance. This is not media literacy. It is narrative control. One of the most revealing aspects of this controversy lies not in what was said, but in how responses were managed. When The Verge investigated the origins and implications of the Rolling Stone article, it reached out to Taylor Swift's longtime publicist, Tree Payne. Payne declined to comment, and lesser statements could be provided on background and not attributed to her. The Verge refused. Its editorial policy prohibits such arrangements because they shift responsibility onto the publication while allowing powerful figures to influence narratives anonymously. This policy exists precisely to prevent image management masquerading as independent journalism. If Taylor Swift and her team truly had no involvement in the report, no background explanation would be necessary. A simple on-the-record denial would suffice. The insistence on anonymity suggests the opposite, that there was context Payne wanted to provide without accountability. Meanwhile, the social listening firm claimed to produce a report independently and provided it exclusively to Rolling Stone because it aligned with the reporter's beat. This explanation strains credibility. How does an obscure startup secure a placement in a major publication, with a journalist known to be sympathetic to Swift, for a report that conveniently reframes criticism in her favor? The firm also stated that it contacted legal counsel believed to represent Swift after completing the report. It claims no response was received. Yet Payne's later engagement with The Verge implies communication was happening, just not in a way that allowed transparency. This pattern mirrors what critics observed in Blake Lively's case: indirect messaging, unnamed sources, and strategic ambiguity. Rather than confronting criticism directly, narratives are reshaped through implication. Responsibility is diffused. Accountability is avoided. Timing again plays a crucial role, as documents surface linking Swift more closely to Lively's film controversy, including text messages and accounts of her presence during key confrontations. The release of a report tying both women to similar smear campaigns appeared calculated. It reframed scrutiny as persecution. The result is plausible deniability paired with narrative dominance. No one explicitly accuses anyone, yet the implication hangs heavy in the air. Justin Baldoni's name surfaces without evidence. Critics are painted as extremists or dupes. Fans are mobilized offensively. This is not accidental. It is crisis management refined into art. What ultimately makes the situation alarming is not whether bots exist or whether fringe actors exploit album releases. Those realities are well known. The danger lies in how easily powerful figures can weaponize the concept of inauthentic discourse to silence legitimate criticism. Blake Lively's controversy was rooted in observable actions. Taylor Swift's album criticism stemmed from artistic and cultural analysis. In both cases, backlash emerged organically. By reframing these responses as coordinated attacks, celebrities sidestep introspection and accountability. This tactic sets a precedent. Any public figure dissatisfied with reception can now claim victimhood. Any critique can be dismissed as manipulation. Over time, this erodes trust, not only in media, but in the public's ability to engage critically with art and power. The irony is that if Taylor Swift had truly orchestrated such a narrative, it would likely have been more effective. The report pleased neither critics nor fans entirely. It was too thin to convince skeptics and too vague to exonerate fully. That alone suggests a rushed or reactive effort rather than a masterstroke. Still, the implications remain. Rolling Stone's favorable review of Swift's album, its willingness to publish a flawed report, and its historical alignment with her brand all contribute to skepticism. When journalism aligns too closely with celebrity interests, it ceases to inform and begins to insulate. At its core, this is about ego and control. Commercial success does not guarantee critical acclaim. When artists conflate sales with validation, criticism feels existential. But deflecting through manufactured narratives only deepens distrust. Accepting criticism, engaging honestly, and moving forward would have been the stronger choice. Instead, the situation now mirrors Blake Lively's deflection implication and the quiet suggestion that accountability is persecution. And in that sense, the question answers itself. When celebrities respond to criticism by blaming invisible enemies, they reveal far more than they intend. What often gets lost in controversies like this is the broader structural issue: how modern media ecosystems reward narratives that simplify, sensationalize, and emotionally polarize rather than clarify. The Taylor Swift-Blake Lively overlap did not become explosive because of irrefutable evidence. It became explosive because the media environment is uniquely suited to turning implication into perceived consensus. Once Rolling Stone published its article, the story entered what can best be described as a media echo loop. Outlets did not independently verify the claims or interrogate the report's methodology. Instead, they cited Rolling Stone as an authority, rephrased its conclusions, and added increasingly speculative commentary. Each repetition stripped away cautionary language while strengthening the illusion of certainty. By the time the narrative reached social media, it was no longer a small firm suggests some coordination, but rather it's been proven Taylor Swift was targeted by Nazi bots. This process is not accidental. It reflects how prestige media functions in the digital age. A recognizable outlet publishes a provocative claim. Smaller outlets amplify it to remain relevant. Influencers react to it for engagement. Fans defend or attack based on identity loyalty. And somewhere along the way, the original lack of evidence becomes irrelevant. What matters is momentum. In this environment, the idea of inorganic discourse becomes especially powerful. It delegitimizes dissent without having to refute it. You no longer need to argue that criticism is wrong. You simply suggest it isn't real. That is an extraordinarily effective tactic in a culture where attention is currency and outrage is algorithmically rewarded. The long-term cost of this tactic, however, is steep. When legitimate criticism is repeatedly framed as manipulation, public trust erodes. People become cynical, not just about celebrities, but about journalism itself. If every backlash is a smear campaign and every controversy is the work of bad actors, then nothing feels authentic anymore. Real accountability dissolves into permanent skepticism. This is particularly damaging when conversations involve race, symbolism, or power dynamics. In Taylor Swift's case, some of the album criticism came from black women engaging in cultural analysis. These critiques were not fringe, extremist, or coordinated. They were thoughtful, specific, and grounded in lived experience. By allowing the bot narrative to dominate the conversation, media coverage effectively sidelined these voices, lumping them into a category of noise rather than treating them as participants in cultural discourse. That silencing effect matters. It reinforces a hierarchy of credibility where celebrity narratives and institutional media voices outweigh marginalized perspectives. Even unintentionally, the bot framing becomes a form of erasure. The Blake Lively parallel deepens this concern. Her controversy demonstrated how quickly public dissatisfaction can be reframed as harassment rather than response. Instead of addressing why audiences felt uncomfortable with her promotional choices, the conversation shifted toward whether she was being unfairly targeted. That shift did not resolve anything. It merely delayed accountability and hardened public opinion. Taylor Swift's situation appears to follow a similar arc rather than allowing the album to exist in a complex critical space. Where praise and criticism coexist, the narrative narrowed into victim versus attackers. Once that framing takes hold, nuance disappears. Fans feel obligated to defend. Critics feel gaslit. And the celebrity at the center becomes insulated from meaningful feedback. Another underexamined consequence is how easily blame migrates. In this case, Justin Baldoni's name surfaced not through evidence, but through association. Because he was already entangled in a separate controversy involving Blake Lively, the implication that he or his team could be behind multiple smear campaigns felt convenient to some commentators. This is how reputational damage spreads. Not through facts, but through proximity and repetition. No explicit accusation needs to be made. All it takes is suggestion, timing, and silence. Over time, implication hardens into assumption. What makes this especially dangerous is that it rewards passivity from those with power. By not directly addressing the issue, by refusing to go on the record, by allowing unnamed sourcing, by letting third-party reports speak instead. Public figures maintain deniability while benefiting from narrative correction. The mess is clean without fingerprints. Yet, history shows that these strategies rarely work long-term. Audiences may accept the framing temporarily, but unresolved contradictions resurface. People notice inconsistencies. They remember how criticism was dismissed rather than addressed. And trust, once fractured, does not fully return. If anything, this episode underscores a larger truth about modern celebrity culture. Success no longer guarantees cultural immunity. Sales numbers, streaming records, and packed tours cannot replace genuine engagement with critique. When artists attempt to shield themselves from discomfort through narrative engineering, they reveal insecurity rather than strength. The more sustainable approach, though less comfortable, is transparency. Acknowledging that some criticism is fair, accepting that not every project will resonate universally, allowing discourse to unfold without reframing as attack. These responses build credibility rather than erode it. Instead, what we are witnessing is the normalization of deflection as strategy. Blake Lively did it. Taylor Swift now appears to be doing it as well, whether directly or through proximity and silence. And if this pattern continues unchecked, it will become the default response for public figures facing backlash. That is the real danger. Not bots, not fringe platforms, not bad actors, but a media culture that increasingly treats accountability as optional and criticism as hostile by default. In the end, the question is not whether coordination exists online. It always has. The question is whether powerful figures should be allowed to use that reality as a blanket excuse to dismiss voices they simply do not want to hear.